Chai with Manjula presents NRI, A Closer Look, a special series that focuses on some of the key issues that affect Indo-Americans and NRIs and takes a close look at solutions and prevention as well. NRI, A Closer Look, presented by Chai with Manjula and sponsored by the Tech Museum of Innovation, San Jose, California, a unique hands-on technology and social museum for people of all ages and backgrounds, which inspires innovations for the benefit of humanity. And Development Alternatives Group, a non-profit organization in India that brings together traditional knowledge and modern science for sustainable development at community, national, and global level. Welcome to Chai with Manjula. In the coming months, we'll be discussing some of the key issues that affect the Indo-American community and exploring possible solutions. We start today on a sad note as we talk about the problem of suicide among our youth. Statistics tell us that in the US, one person commits suicide every 15 minutes, and an attempt is made every minute. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among 15 to 24-year-olds and second among 25 to 34-year-olds. And unfortunately, the Indo-American youth are also falling in the grip of this epidemic. Here is one mother grappling with her loss.
I would like to share my story with you and your audience. Thanksgiving was a very special holiday for our family and friends. We had a lot of fun. In 1998, things changed for the worse. Our son was a second-year medical student in University of Massachusetts, 50 miles away from our house. He was supposed to reach around 5 p.m. and he was late. I was getting worried. I called his roommates and they said that we cannot find Neil. His car is in the driveway and his room door is locked. My first reaction was break the door or call the police. The reason I was thinking in these terms was that Neil told me that he had cold and flu. And I was worried maybe he has fainted. Myself, my husband, and my daughter Mira started for our longest journey of our life to see Neil at his place. When we reached his house, there were roommates, there were sirens, and there were police, and there was so much confusion. And we were just surprised. I still remember one police officer came to me and he said these 5 words. The words were, "Your son is no more." And the second sentence he said that, "Your son died. He cut his wrists." We all three were shocked. It was like unbelievable. And we all three fell on the ground with just grief. Our lives changed in 98 without our precious son, Neil. Life is not the same.
Nina, our hearts go out to you and to many, many other families out there who have suffered a similar loss. It's not an easy subject for you to talk about, so we really appreciate your joining us today. Please tell us a little bit about Neil and his reasons for suicide.
Neil was very intelligent, funny, kind, outgoing, handsome. He was 6 feet 3 inches tall. What was shocking that even 4 days before his death, he scored almost 100% in his exams. He seemed to have everything together, except he was trying to break with his girlfriend. In the last 2 weeks when I met him, he said he is not hungry. He looked a little withdrawn, not saying any jokes. And I felt that he's hiding something from me. Now I know these can be signs of depression, but at that time I did not know. I'm left with his sweet memories. I cannot forget his last glimpse. When I saw him in the coffin, his body was cold, but he looked so handsome. I will never see him as a doctor, getting married, or having children. And life is not sane without Neil.
Nina, thank you so much for sharing something so personal and so painful with us. And thanks also for starting the walk. You have taken your own tragedy and turned it into an opportunity to save lives, which is commendable. We thank you, we salute you, and wish your family the very best.
Thanks, Manjula, for bringing such a sad topic with stigma attached open to public.
That was Nina Grover joining us from Longmeadow, Massachusetts, a mother who lost her 23-year-old son to suicide, the worst tragedy that can hit any parent. While dealing with her own loss, Nina started the first formal suicide prevention walk called End of Secrecy in 2001 to spare other parents and families the pain and agony that she and her family have to live with. The walk has gone nationwide after American Foundation for Suicide Prevention adopted it, and it's raising awareness and large sums of funds for the organization. It is now called End of Secrecy Community Walk. Joining me now is Parijat Deshpande, a mental health consultant who is the founder and executive director of My Sahana, which is a South Asian mental health organization right here in the Bay Area. Parijat, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You know, Neil's story is just one example. There are so many other gut-wrenching stories of youngsters taking their own life. And yet we tend to think that this is never going to happen to me, to my family, or my friends or neighbors. While the reality is that depression can hit anyone, anytime, which at times also leads to suicide. So as a mental health professional, what are your findings and thoughts on the subject, especially when it comes to the Indo-American youth?
You're absolutely right. Suicide, mental illness can transcend all cultures, all ages, all ethnicities. It can happen to anybody, including the Indo-American youth. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of different reasons and causes behind suicide that we see. A few of them can include experiencing prior or current abuse, alcohol or substance abuse, mm-hmm. persistent feelings of hopelessness, as well as being socially isolated. And then, like you touched upon, mental illness definitely plays a part in that as well. Depression is one of them. Bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and others also factor into that too.
Okay, so what are some unique factors when it comes to the Indo-American community? What kind of pressures and stresses are they dealing with?
You know, it's all of those things that we just mentioned, but definitely there's a huge factor, a cultural factor that plays a part. Most of the generation of Indo-American youth that are here have immigrant parents, mm-hmm. and they grew up and were raised in a very different culture than their children are growing up in, and they're learning how to balance the culture at home versus the one at school or at work. Yeah. It's very different.
It's very hard. You are living two cultures, one inside the home, one outside in school or workplace or whatever.
Exactly. Right. So you almost have two different sides of you that you have to develop. There's a lot of academic pressure as well, and that's something that I personally have experienced when I worked with clients from mm-hmm. age 9 all the way up to mid-20s. There's a lot of stress and pressure placed on reaching a certain level of academic achievement.
Your GPA, your SATs, your college, where you go, and your profession. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on that, a lot of emphasis.
Exactly.
In the South Asian community.
Absolutely. And then as Nina had mentioned too, I mean, the Indo-American youth are also dabbling in the dating scene, which is not necessarily something their parents knew about, and so they're trying to figure it out on their own. And so relationship stresses definitely play a part in that, getting along with your significant other, trying to break up or see how it works, marriage, things like that. And this pressure from parents and community to marry someone from your own community of certain
class and education and all those expectations can be overbearing. Of course, these pressures and stresses are there. So how do you deal with these? What would you tell youngsters? How to cope with these?
It's really important to first recognize that the pressures are there,
Okay.
and to be able to speak with somebody. It could be your parents, it could be a teacher, a coach, anybody that you feel that you can trust, and share your concerns and say, I'm just really stressed out, or I'm in this situation and I don't know how to handle it. And reach out and speak to somebody and get that out. Instead of keeping it in and holding on, because then it just festers and grows and can become a bigger problem.
Yeah, and also I think so many times, like we have physical education class, why don't we also have, each school should have a wellness class which includes emotional well-being, mental health, and coping with stress, things like yoga, meditation, breathing exercises.
I completely
Yes,
agree.
schools should offer that.
Yes,
and it doesn't even cost much or anything actually. These days you can have guided meditation on tape, online.
Exactly.
So I think that's something parents and schools should start right from the beginning.
It would be so wonderful. The
they're-
earlier we can get in, the sooner it becomes a habit, and
Yeah.
then we can kind of prevent a lot of these things from getting to be so devastating.
Right, that's a very effective tool to fight stress and tension. Okay, now Parijat, you just said that kids should talk to someone, to parent or coach or somebody around them. But the thing is, most of the time, mental health or depression is neglected because of a variety of reasons. And one of them, of course, is lack of information. But another major reason is the stigma attached to mental illness. What is your advice on that subject?
Stigma plays such a big role for the reason why so many South Asians don't receive the services that they could benefit from.
Right.
There are two types of stigma that come up. There's a public stigma and there's a self-stigma. And I think it's really important that we recognize both of them. The public stigma comes from people around us, people who tend to give us the message that it's not okay to experience mental illness or to experience or express emotional distress.
Right.
And then there's the self-stigma, which is the thought process that goes on in our own minds of, I shouldn't be feeling this way, I should be doing X, Y, and Z. And those shoulds and coulds and woulds squashes what our actual experience is.
Okay.
And because of those two forms of stigma, what we have is the situation just gets more and more complicated and more quiet, if that makes sense. So it perpetuates then stereotypes, which is that we tend to believe people who have emotional issues are maybe weak or dangerous or unable to take care of themselves.
That's true.
And we have these very negative associations with them, and what leads further from that is then how we treat them, which is we might lash out our anger towards them. We become very frustrated, or we try to avoid them because we don't think they're good for being around our children or our friends or family. And all of this, what it does is it isolates and isolates and isolates the person who's going through something that's very difficult. And that makes it much more difficult for them to actually reach out and do what we were just talking about, which is what's going to be helpful.
Yeah, so it's quite deep-rooted. So something has to change right from the beginning. What do you suggest? How should parents be talking to their children when they are little so that they are comfortable? When they grow up, they're comfortable about sharing their feelings or talking about their emotions, and don't grow up so stigmatized as teenagers and adults.
Absolutely. I think the number one thing is for parents to be comfortable with expressing emotion, because children not only learn what you say, but they watch you so intently, and they'll end up doing what you do. So modeling what it is like to express emotion in a healthy manner, talk about what it feels like to be sad, to be angry, to be frustrated, to be happy. Let them know what that's like, and have them watch you resolve those emotions too, because that's very important.
So teach by example.
Teach by example, exactly. And the main goal is to normalize it, that any emotion that they feel is okay to feel.
Validated.
And you have to be able to validate it, absolutely. And when they feel comfortable to say, okay, I am allowed to feel whatever emotion it is that I have, then they're going to feel more comfortable to share with their parents. And the more it becomes a habit, the more I think they will grow up to feel comfortable to share no matter what it is that they come up against.
Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about depression. How can parents or anybody around a depressed person even recognize? You know, a lot of times afterwards, looking back, people say, oh, I had seen some indications, or I wish I knew. This was like Nina was also saying that at the time she couldn't recognize the symptoms. So share with us, what are some of the alarming signs that clearly indicate that this person could be suicidal?
Okay, so identifying signs of depression are one, for sure. I think overall there are signs of red flags that somebody might be contemplating suicide, which is expressing some kind of hopelessness, feeling like I don't, saying things like, I don't want to live anymore, life is so hard.
Nobody understands
Nobody
me,
understands.
nobody loves me.
Exactly, I don't know how to get out of this situation, just feeling very helpless. I think talking about wanting to kill themselves, some people are very open and upfront about that, and we don't want to brush that aside as them just joking. That's important to take seriously. If somebody especially goes as far as to have a specific plan and tell you how they're going to do it.
Oh, that's definitely
very important to recognize
signal,
that.
yeah.
Any kind of risky behavior is important to recognize if they suddenly become very aggressive, and also if they become very withdrawn. And if you just suddenly notice they're shutting down, they're not so engaging anymore, all of those things are important red flags to take into account.
I see. Now, I've also read that only 4% of people repeat a suicide attempt, and 96% of the people go ahead and lead a normal life after the first attempt, which means intervention is the key. So how can someone help somebody around them who is suicidal? Give us some, because sometimes even if you recognize, you don't know what to do now.
Right.
So what should people do? What are the first actions, steps to take?
Step number one, say something. Definitely say something. Pull the person aside in a private situation when they're comfortable and share your concerns. Sit them down very, casually and say very specifically, these are the things that you've been doing that I've noticed, and I love you and I care about you and I'm very worried.
Okay.
Number two, which is very important, is use the word. It is completely okay.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Because you are afraid to use the word suicide
Exactly.
or death because you think you are planting an idea in somebody's
Right.
mind. But you are saying that that's not the case.
It is absolutely not the case. And in fact, it'll work the other way. The person might actually feel more comfortable with you, that you're recognizing just how dire of a situation they're in or how difficult their emotions are.
Okay, that's a very important point.
Yeah, so use the word. Don't argue with them or preach to them or talk down to them.
Right.
Just listen. Listen, ask questions, listen to what they have to say, and validate their experience. It's totally okay to say something like, I understand why you would feel what you're feeling, or I can see why this is what you are going through, and help them feel like you are on their side.
Okay.
And when they feel comfortable, they're going to want to open up a little bit more, hopefully, and that's going to be important.
But what do you actually do, after you've done all this? What help you get them?
There are a number of different places they can receive help. You can recommend that they go speak to a mental health professional, or even go to their regular physician and they can send a referral if they feel it's necessary.
Okay.
There are suicide hotlines that are available 24/7.
Right. Okay. Well, Parijat, thank you so much for coming and for giving us such valuable information.
Thank you so much for addressing such an important topic.
Well, as Parijat explained, suicide is preventable and depression treatable. But we must drop the stigma attached to mental illness and treat it like any other illness. Please remember that suicide is not the answer. Getting help is the answer. Coming up next is our special segment, Technology for Social Good. Welcome back. This is our special segment, Technology for Social Good. And my guest is Abby Longcore from the Tech Museum of Innovation in San Jose, where she is director of the Tech Challenge, a signature program of the museum. Abby, welcome to Chai with Manjula.
Thank you.
Well, the Tech Challenge is an extremely popular program in the Bay Area. I know it's for the youth. So tell us about it. How did it start and what all goes on?
So the Tech Challenge is currently in its 27th year. So we've been around for a while, since the late 80s. And it started because some local people who work in industry were at the Santa Clara Valley Science Fair, and they felt like students didn't really have that much opportunity there to sort of engage in real world problems and solving them and do real engineering. And they sort of envisioned this idea of creating an engineering challenge, and they created the Tech Challenge. And then over the years, we've grown a lot. And ultimately the museum sort of grew out of the Tech Challenge, because the challenge kind of predates the museum. So a lot of our program founders then became involved in helping to create the Tech Museum of Innovation.
Okay, so what all goes on, and describe to us.
So the students work in teams, and we have students that are anywhere from 5th grade all the way to high school seniors, and they're participating in different divisions.
Are they given a problem to solve?
They are. So this year the challenge is to harness the wind to move water, because in California 19% of our total energy consumption is moving and processing water. And if we were able to do that with renewable energy source, that would be huge for us in terms of pollution and as a state in terms of energy consumption. So what they're doing is their challenge is actually mirroring a place in the water system where the water has to climb over the Tehachapi Mountains, which are about 2,000 feet tall, to get into the city of Los Angeles. And the energy to do that is enough to power the city of Los Angeles for about 2 months. So the energy for 1 year of the water moving over the mountains is 2 months of energy consumption for the city of Los Angeles. So our students are going to be using wind power, building something that uses wind power to move water up into a canister, and then they'll have to talk to the judges about how they would do this in the real world.
Wow, that is a challenge.
Yeah.
Huge challenge. So there's only one challenge given each time, and everybody's working towards that in teams?
So every year there's one challenge given, and every year it's a real world topic, so it varies all across the board. We've had a lot of different stuff over the last 27 years. And then they come and they wow us with the things that they've built and that they've envisioned and designed.
Wow, how much fun.
Yeah, it really is.
So how do people participate in it? Do the kids apply on their own, or do they come through schools?
So they can do either. We have any student who wants to participate can start a team. A team is 2 to 6 students.
Okay.
And really our only requirement for the teams is that they have to be between 5th grade and 12th grade, and that they have to have an adult who we call an advisor, who just kind of supervises them, makes sure they're safe, not using power tools to cut their fingers off or something like that. And they can also participate through their school. We have schools, teachers who give this to their students for extra credit or as a mandatory class project. So pretty much any way they want to participate, we're happy to have them.
And is it open to the Bay Area only, or is it open statewide or nationwide?
We're happy to have students participate from anywhere. For the most part, they are Bay Area students, because the challenge itself is in San Jose, and they come to participate to show what they've built in April. And so, it's a long way to come if they're from somewhere else, but we don't exclude anyone, so anywhere they want to come from is fine.
Okay, so what is the application process like?
They just apply online through our website.
Which is?
Our website is thetechchallenge.thetech.org. And they can register right there online, and then we have supporting events that they can attend to get them ready.
Okay. So Abby, before we go, when is the event this year, and what is the deadline to apply?
So the deadline to register is March 31st, but we encourage teams to register sooner, because the event itself is April 12th and 13th.
Okay.
So if they really don't start working on their project until March 31st, it's going to be really hard for them to build something successful by April 12th and 13th.
Okay. Okay. Well, great. You gave us some very good information about the contest, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, this is a wonderful program for the young innovators. And here in the Bay Area, we are fortunate to have such an opportunity right in our backyard. So encourage your children to participate. They will learn so much in a fun environment. The last segment of our show is Reflections with Jessie. Jessie Kaur is the author of highly acclaimed children's books, Dear Takuya and the Royal Falcon, and the recently launched The Enchanted Garden of Talwandi. Her books promote the universal values of compassion, forgiveness, and respect and dignity for all. She has traveled extensively and spoken at spiritual retreats and interfaith conferences on similar subjects.
Welcome to Reflections with Jessie. Today we're going to talk about oneness. We are one at the core. If we live in the awareness of oneness, we will bring harmony in our life and on our planet. But what does it mean when we say we're one at the core? It means that we come from the same source. Call it God, Jehovah, Ram, Rahim, Allah, or Waheguru. It also means that as offsprings of the same Creator, we are interconnected. Science is converging with spirituality and arriving at the same conclusion. Experiments by quantum physicists have established that individual electrons act as a part of an interconnected whole. A rainbow is a beautiful example of an underlying inseparability of existence. 7 beautiful colors are distinct and luminous, each in its own right, and yet they are a part of a complete whole. Waves ebb and flow in a delightful rhythmic play, but are inseparable from the vast bosom of the ocean. The rays of the sun, nurturing and life-giving, are no more separate from their source than the colors of the rainbow or the waves. Now let us consider a more mundane and often less pretty aspect of this reality. We have seen the globalization of the world. The trends, economy, tsunami, earthquakes in one part of the world are no more confined. In the recent years, we have seen how the greed of Wall Street negatively impacted the economy of the entire world. The radiation from the nuclear plant crippled by the earthquake in Japan is impacting sea life on the west coast of America. The weather patterns across the world are changing, perhaps due to the lack of respect certain individuals and nations have shown to Mother Earth. Bottom line, what you and I do in our daily life impacts not just us, but has far-reaching ramifications. When I hurt someone, I'm hurting myself too. This calls for a new humanity, not a paradigm shift, but a reality shift, a new beginning that has been taught by sages from times immemorial. A conscious striving for peace and harmony in the world that begins as a personal journey from within. When we understand that the immutable law of oneness is real and we live in compliance with its principles, we can change our lives, our planet, our very destiny. We will move from self-centeredness to service, from apathy to empathy, from fear to love, from inner peace to peace in the world. It's not easy, but worth striving for. For today, let's contemplate upon oneness of the Creator and the creation, because this is the first baby step to take on this journey. My inspiration comes from the Mool Mantra of Guru Nanak, Ek Onkar. Find a mantra in your tradition that speaks to this concept. All sages have experienced it and spoken of it, and practice it. Let it permeate your consciousness and expand it. Thank you for watching, and until next time, be in high spirits. Chardhi Kala.
That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you again after 2 weeks.